The alert sounded for the third time that day on Lunar Research Station. Dr. Emma Foster lifted her tired eyes from the microscope and watched the red warning lights flash across her lab's white walls. She hadn't slept in 20 hours, but sleep wasn't important anymore. Not since the Nexari attacks began 3 weeks ago. Dr. Foster, a young assistant, burst through the lab doors. They've hit the Saturn mining station. It's completely gone. Emma's hands gripped the edge of her desk. The mining station had held over 3,000 people. Her sister had worked there as an engineer. Fighting back tears, she forced herself to focus on the data screens in front of her. "Show me the attack footage," she said, her voice steady despite the pain in her chest. The main screen lit up with images from the mining station's last transmission. The Nexari ships looked like giant shards of blue crystal, beautiful and deadly as they cut through space. Emma watched as they surrounded the station, their crystalline surfaces pulsing with strange light patterns. In orbit above Earth, Captain Daniel Wright of the UES Harbinger received the same footage. His ship was one of humanity's most advanced warships, but against the Nexari, it felt as useful as a paper boat in a hurricane. He stood on the bridge, his crew silent as they watched another human settlement disappear. "Captain, we're getting distress calls from 3 more colonies," his communications officer reported. "Europa Research Base, Titan Colony, and the Mars Agricultural Station. All report Nexari ships approaching." Daniel ran his hand through his short brown hair, a habit from his academy days that surfaced whenever he faced impossible decisions. His ship could maybe reach 1 colony in time. Just 1. "Show me their populations and defensive capabilities," he ordered. The numbers appeared on his screen. Europa Research Base, 500 people, minimal defenses. Titan Colony, 2,000 people, standard defense grid. Mars Agricultural Station, 1,500 people, food production crucial for other colonies. Back on Luna, Emma noticed something odd in the attack footage. She played it again, zooming in on the Nexari ships. Just before they fired their weapons, their crystalline structure showed tiny imperfections, almost like cracks. "Computer, analyze Nexari ship surface patterns during the last 10 attacks," she commanded. "Look for any structural changes before weapon discharge." As the computer worked, emergency channels filled with more distress calls. The Nexari were attacking everywhere at once, and humanity's defenses were failing. Earth's most powerful weapons barely scratched the alien ships. Captain Wright made his decision. "Set course for Mars Agricultural Station," he announced. "Maximum speed." He knew he was leaving thousands to die, but without the food production center, many more would starve in the coming months. "Sir," his tactical officer called out, "Nexari ships just appeared in Earth orbit. They're just sitting there, not attacking." Daniel walked to the main viewport. Dozens of crystal ships hung against the black of space, their surfaces reflecting Earth's blue glow. It was like they were studying humanity's homeworld, planning their next move. In her lab, Emma's computer beeped. The analysis was complete, and what she saw made her heart race. The Nexari ships showed consistent pattern changes right before attacking, but there was something else. During a battle near Jupiter, a civilian transport's emergency broadcast had caused visible distortions in the nearest alien vessel. "Get me Captain Wright," she told her assistant. "I think I know why they're not attacking Earth yet, and it might be our only chance to stop them." As Emma waited for the connection, she studied the footage again. The Nexari weren't just advanced aliens. They were living crystals, and their structure reacted to something humans were producing. Something that might be stronger on Earth than in the colonies. The screen lit up with Captain Wright's face. He looked exhausted, but his eyes were sharp. "Captain," Emma said, "I need you to redirect to Luna Station. I found something in the attack patterns. The Nexari, they're not just attacking randomly. They're systematically removing humans from space, working their way toward Earth. But I think I know why." "Make it quick, Doctor. I've got 3 colonies about to be wiped out." They're afraid of us, Captain. Not our weapons or technology. Something about us affects them physically. We just need to figure out what it is before they finish testing our defenses and decide to attack Earth. Daniel looked at the crystal ships in Earth orbit, remembering how many people he'd already failed to save. You've got 48 hours, Doctor. After that, I don't think any discovery will matter. As the connection ended, Emma turned back to her data. Somewhere in these patterns was humanity's chance for survival. She just hoped she could find it before the Nexeri decided to strike. Lieutenant Rachel Cooper stood at her post on Titan Colony's defense station, watching the evacuation ships take off one by one. The Nexeri crystals ships hung in the orange sky like deadly icicles, yet they hadn't attacked. Not yet. Last civilian group boarding now, a voice crackled over her radio. Only military personnel remained to defend the evacuation. Rachel checked her weapon, even though she knew it would do little against the alien vessels. The first Nexeri ship moved closer. Rachel's hands were sweaty inside her spacesuit gloves. She watched the crystal surface of the alien vessels start to pulse with its usual attack pattern. Then something strange happened. A child on one of the evacuation ships started crying. The sound carried over an open radio channel, and at that exact moment, the nearest Nexeri ship shuddered. Tiny cracks appeared across its surface. Did anyone else see that? Rachel grabbed her tablet and started recording. The ship reacted to a sound. Before anyone could respond, more Nexeri vessels moved in. The evacuation ships were only halfway to safety. They wouldn't make it without more time. Rachel made a quick decision. She plugged her suit's radio into the colony's main communication array. Everyone on this frequency, I need you to make noise. Shout, cry, sing, anything. Now, her fellow soldiers must have thought she'd lost her mind, but they were out of options. One by one, they joined in. Some sang their national anthems, others shouted battle cries. A few just screamed in fear and anger. The effect was immediate. The Nexeri ships closest to the colony trembled. Their crystal surfaces clouded over, like glass filling with smoke. Keep going, Rachel yelled, recording everything. Lieutenant Cooper to UEA's Harbinger, are you receiving this? Captain Wright's voice came through her radio. We see it, Lieutenant. Hold that position as long as you can. We're coming in hot. On the Harbinger, Daniel Wright watched the feeds from Titan in amazement. Get this data to Dr. Foster on Luna immediately, he ordered, and push those engines harder. I want weapons range in 5 minutes. Back on Luna Station, Emma Foster's lab was a buzz of activity. Her team worked frantically to analyze the footage from Titan. It's not just the sounds, Emma muttered, comparing readings. Look at the energy patterns. The Nexeri ships react most strongly to the emotional content. Fear, anger, desperation. All of it creates unique wave patterns that interfere with their crystalline structure. Her research partner, Dr. Brian Martinez, pointed to another screen. Emma, look at this. Remember that civilian transport near Jupiter? The one that caused distortions. They were broadcasting a distress call filled with panic and fear. It wasn't the radio waves that affected the aliens. It was the emotions behind them. Emma's eyes widened. That's why they've been destroying our colonies first. They're not just attacking. They're containing a threat. Us. Human emotions actually hurt them. On Titan, Rachel and her team kept up their chorus of human voices. The Nexeri ships had backed away, their surfaces cracking and rippling. But more were coming. The Harbinger burst out of warp drive above Titan, weapons blazing. For the first time, their attacks seemed to work. The emotionally weakened Nexeri ships shattered under the barrage. All evacuation ships, get clear now, Captain Wright ordered. Lieutenant Cooper, get your people out of there. Rachel waited until the last evacuation ship was away before running to her own escape pod. Through her viewport, she saw the Nexeri ships regrouping, their surfaces healing. They adapt quickly, she reported as her pod launched. The effect weakens if we use the same emotional patterns too long. Hours later, in an emergency meeting on Luna Station, Emma shared her findings with Earth's military command. The Nexari are living crystals with a shared consciousness, she explained. Their structure is vulnerable to the energy patterns created by human emotions, but we need to find a way to amplify this effect before they adapt completely. Admiral Laura Hayes, the head of Earth's Defense Forces, leaned forward. How long do we have? Emma looked at the latest battle data. The Nexari are already changing their crystal structure. They're learning to shield themselves. We need a breakthrough, and we need it fast. Then we'll give you everything you need, Admiral Hayes said. Because right now, Doctor, human feelings are the only weapon we have that works. As the meeting ended, Emma watched through a window as more crystal ships appeared near Earth. They were running out of time. Humanity had found its first real hope against the Nexari, but hope alone wouldn't be enough. They needed to turn their emotions into a weapon before the aliens learned to ignore them completely. Dr. Emma Foster hadn't left her lab in 3 days. Empty coffee cups littered her desk as she and Dr. Brian Martinez studied the brainwave patterns from successful defensive actions against the Nexari. Look at this spike here, Brian said, pointing to a chart. Every time humans showed strong emotions during an attack, their brainwaves created this same pattern. Emma nodded, rubbing her tired eyes. But it's not strong enough anymore. The Nexari are learning to block it. Their conversation was interrupted by an urgent alert. On the main screen, they watched in horror as Mars' central colony came under attack. The Nexari ships looked different now. Their crystal surfaces were darker, more dense. They're evolving, Emma whispered, getting stronger. In the colony's final transmission, 50,000 people screamed in terror, but the Nexari ships didn't crack or shudder like before. The alien vessels fired their weapons, and Mars' central colony vanished in a flash of light. Admiral Laura Hayes arrived at Luna Station an hour later. Her uniform was crisp, but her face showed the weight of losing another colony. Please tell me you have something, she said, walking into the lab. We just lost Mars Central. 50,000 people, gone in seconds. Emma pulled up her latest research. We've identified the exact frequency that disrupts the Nexari consciousness. Human brainwaves, especially during intense emotional states, generate this pattern naturally. But it's too weak now, like trying to break a wall by throwing pebbles at it. Brian stepped forward with a hologram showing a new device design. We think we can amplify these frequencies. Create a weapon that focuses human emotional energy and broadcasts it at the Nexari ships. How? Admiral Hayes asked. We need volunteers, Emma explained. People willing to be connected to an experimental device that will amplify and focus their emotional output. But, she hesitated, there are risks. The human brain isn't meant to broadcast emotions at such high levels. The Admiral's face hardened. What kind of risks? Mental strain, possibly physical damage, Brian said quietly. We don't know for sure. This has never been done before. Before Admiral Hayes could respond, another alert sounded. A Nexari fleet had destroyed the defense stations around Jupiter. Earth's outer defense line was crumbling. How many volunteers do you need? The Admiral asked. For a test, at least 50, Emma answered. Their combined emotional output might be enough to affect one Nexari ship. You'll have them in an hour, Hayes said, already sending orders through her tablet. For a full-scale defense of Earth, how many would we need? Emma and Brian shared a worried look. Thousands, Emma said. Maybe millions. And we'd need to build amplification stations around the planet. The Admiral nodded grimly. Then that's what we'll do. Humanity didn't come this far to be wiped out by living crystals. Over the next few days, Emma and Brian worked with volunteers from the Luna military base. They built a prototype amplifier, a circle of chairs connected to a central broadcasting array. Each chair had neural sensors to read and amplify the user's emotional output. Remember, Emma told the first group of volunteers, "Focus on your strongest feelings. Think about what we've lost, what we're fighting for. The Nexari are vulnerable to human emotion. We just need to hit them hard enough." The first test was a disaster. When activated, the amplifier overwhelmed its users. Several passed out. Others got severe headaches. The emotional broadcast was still too weak to affect the Nexari. "We need to refine it," Brian said, helping a dizzy volunteer to the medical bay. "Find a way to protect the users while increasing the output." But they were running out of time. Every day brought news of another lost colony, another failed defense. The Nexari were getting closer to Earth, and their new crystalline structures seemed almost impossible to damage. Late one night, as Emma stared at failed test results, she noticed something in the data. During the strongest emotional broadcasts, the volunteers' brainwaves had started to sync up, multiplying the effect. She rushed to Brian's workstation. "We've been doing this wrong. We don't need to amplify individual emotions. We need to synchronize them. Create one unified emotional broadcast." Brian quickly ran the numbers. That could work. If we could get enough people feeling the same thing at the same time. The amplifier would protect them by spreading the load across all users, Emma finished. And the synchronized output would be exponentially stronger. They immediately called Admiral Hayes. As Emma explained their breakthrough, a new alert came in. The Nexari had reached the moon's orbit. Through the lab's window, they could see crystal ships approaching Luna Station. Their time for testing was over. They would have to build the new amplifier system even as humanity fought its final battles. The only question was, could they finish it before the Nexari finished them? The evacuation alarm blared through Luna Station's corridors. Red emergency lights flashed as people ran to their escape ships. Through every window, the Nexari crystal ships could be seen approaching, their surfaces now almost black with evolved armor. Dr. Emma Foster rushed to save her research data, while Dr. Brian Martinez handled the equipment shutdown. They had 10 minutes before the Nexari would be in firing range. "The backup drives are almost full," Emma shouted over the alarm. Years of research, test results, and breakthrough data scrolled across her screen as they copied to portable drives. Captain Daniel Wright's voice came through the station speakers. "This is the UES Harbinger to all Luna Station personnel. We will hold off the Nexari as long as we can. Get to your designated evacuation ships now." The Harbinger and 3 other warships moved between the station and the approaching Nexari fleet. Their weapons fired continuously, but the alien ships barely showed damage. Brian looked up from his console. "Emma, take the drives and go. I'll make sure everything transfers." "We're not leaving anything behind," Emma insisted, grabbing another set of backup drives. The station shook violently. Through the lab windows, they watched a Nexari beam cut one of Earth's warships in half. 2 minutes to full data transfer, Brian called out. Another blast rocked the station. Part of the ceiling collapsed near the lab entrance, blocking their main escape route. "Captain Wright," Emma called through her communicator. "We need more time. The research isn't fully saved yet." "There is no more time, Doctor." Daniel's voice was strained. "The Harbinger's shields are at 15%. Get out now." Emma looked at the progress bar, 89% complete. Then at Brian, who was typing frantically at his console. Then at the blocked main door. "The emergency exit," she said, pointing to a small door at the back of the lab. "Brian, we can still make it." The station shook again. Warning lights showed that the Nexari had hit their power core. Systems were failing throughout the station. 92% transferred, Brian said calmly. Too calmly. Emma suddenly realized what he was planning. "No," she started to say, but Brian hit a button and thick emergency barriers slid down between them, cutting the lab in half. "The backup drives in your half have most of the data," he said through the intercom. "I'll stay and make sure the rest transfers. Someone needs to manage the power reroutes manually now." "Brian, don't you dare. We need you for the research." He smiled sadly through the barrier. You figured out the synchronized emotional broadcast. You can make it work. Now go, before we lose everything. The station rocked with another hit. Emma's screen showed the Harbinger taking heavy damage as it blocked shots meant for the evacuation ships. With tears streaming down her face, Emma grabbed the backup drives and ran for the emergency exit. As she reached the small escape pod attached to it, she heard Brian's last words through her communicator. The final data package is sent to your pod. It's been an honor, Emma. Save Earth. The escape pod launched just as a massive explosion tore through the research wing of Luna Station. Emma watched through blurry eyes as her home for the past 5 years, and her friend for much longer, disappeared in a flash of light. The Harbinger limped alongside her pod, its hull scared and burning. Other escaped ships streaked toward Earth, carrying the survivors of humanity's last great space station. Dr. Foster, are you all right? Captain Wright's voice came through her pod's radio. I have the data, she said numbly. Most of it. Brian stayed to save the rest. There was a moment of silence. His sacrifice won't be wasted, Daniel said firmly. We're going to make sure of that. As they entered Earth's atmosphere, Emma clutched the drives to her chest. On them was humanity's last hope, the research showing how to turn human emotions into a weapon. But now, they would have to finish it on Earth, with the Nexari right behind them. The pod's window showed the planet below. Lights from cities sparkled across continents, 8 billion people going about their lives, most still unaware of how close the enemy was. Where are they taking us? Emma asked, watching other escape pods descend. Colorado, Daniel replied. Deep in the Rocky Mountains. Admiral Hayes has a backup facility there. It's as secure as we can make it. Emma nodded, forcing herself to focus. Brian's sacrifice had saved the research, but now they had to make it work. The Nexari would follow them to Earth soon, and this time there would be nowhere left to run. She looked at the latest scans of the alien ships. Their crystal structure had evolved to resist normal emotional broadcasts, but if they could get the synchronized emotion amplifier working, if they could channel the feelings of millions of people at once. The pod entered the clouds, and Emma made herself a promise. She would finish this. For Brian, for everyone they'd lost, and for everyone still left to save. 1 mile beneath the Rocky Mountains, Dr. Emma Foster stared at the new Emotional Amplification Array, EAA. The device filled a massive underground chamber, with hundreds of connection pods arranged in circles around a central broadcasting tower. The basic design works, said Kevin Patterson, a young researcher who had joined her team. His fresh perspective had helped solve several problems in the past week, but we need more power to break through the Nexari's new armor. Emma nodded, watching test volunteers enter the pods. After losing Brian and Luna Station 2 weeks ago, they'd worked non-stop to rebuild their research. The Nexari now surrounded Earth, their black crystal ships blocking most space travel. Starting Test 47, Kevin announced over the facility speakers. All volunteers, please focus on the memory we discussed. In the pods, 20 people concentrated on the same emotional memory, the joy of their children's first steps. The EAA hummed to life, its tower glowing with collected emotional energy. Suddenly, alarms blared. The volunteers' heart rates spiked dangerously. Shut it down, Emma shouted, running to the nearest pod. The test subject inside was shaking, tears streaming down his face. Kevin quickly powered down the array. Medical teams rushed in to help the volunteers. What happened? Admiral Hayes demanded, entering the chamber. She'd aged years in the past weeks, dealing with constant Nexari probes of Earth's defenses. Emma checked the readings. The emotional sync was perfect, but the broadcast power was too high. It overwhelmed their nervous systems. How long until you can fix it? Before Emma could answer, the facility shook. Far above them, the Nexari were testing Earth's ground defenses again. We don't have much time, the Admiral said quietly. Our last satellites show they're gathering more ships. The attack could come any day. Emma looked at the data from Test 47, then at a photo on her desk. Her and Brian celebrating their first breakthrough on Luna Station. An idea struck her. "Kevin," she called, "what if we're thinking about this wrong? We're trying to force 20 people to feel the exact same thing at the exact same level, but that's not how human emotions naturally work." The young researcher walked over, curious. "What do you mean?" "Look at this." Emma pulled up brain scan data. In normal human interaction, emotions resonate and build on each other. Like a crowd at a sports game or a concert. They're not identical. They're harmonious. Kevin's eyes widened. "So instead of forcing synchronized emotions, we let them naturally align," Emma finished. "The EAA shouldn't control the feelings, just amplify and direct them." They worked through the night, rewriting the EAA's core programming. Instead of forcing emotional synchronization, the new system would let users' feelings naturally harmonize, like instruments in an orchestra. "Test 48 beginning," Kevin announced the next morning. "Volunteers, this time just focus on what you're naturally feeling. Let the emotions flow." Emma watched nervously as the EAA powered up. The volunteers in their pods remained calm. The tower's glow was different this time. Not the harsh beam of previous tests, but a softer, pulsing light. "Power level stable," Kevin reported. "Emotional harmony at 75% and climbing naturally. No signs of neural stress." Emma checked the readings herself. The emotional broadcast was stronger than ever, but the volunteers showed no signs of distress. Their feelings were working together without being forced into perfect sync. "Admiral," she called out, "I think we've done it." Laura Hayes studied the data carefully. How many people would we need for a full-scale defense of Earth? Emma calculated quickly. With this efficiency, maybe 1 million connected to EAA stations around the world. Their combined emotional broadcast should be strong enough to break through even the Nexary's evolved armor. The facility shook again, harder this time. Above them, the Nexary attacks were getting stronger. "Start manufacturing more arrays," Hayes ordered. "I'll coordinate with world leaders to get volunteers." "How long to build enough stations?" 3 days for basic coverage. 5 for optimal," Kevin said. Another blast rocked the facility. Warning lights flashed as dust fell from the ceiling. "That felt closer," Emma said quietly. Admiral Hayes checked her tactical display. "The Nexari are changing formation. Intelligence thinks they're preparing for their main attack." Emma looked at the successful test results, then at the tired but determined faces of the volunteers. They'd finally found a way to use humanity's emotions without destroying the humans creating them. But would they have time to deploy it? "Get me everything I need," she told the Admiral. "We have to build these arrays faster than we've ever built anything before." Because somewhere up there, in the darkness of space, the Nexari were preparing to end humanity once and for all. Their next attack wouldn't be a test. It would be extinction. The whole world worked as one. In every country, people built emotional amplification arrays, EAAs, in underground bunkers, abandoned mines, and mountain caves. 4 days after Emma's breakthrough, over 100 stations were ready. "Rio Station online," a voice announced in the Colorado Command Center. "New Delhi connected. Sydney standing by." Dr. Emma Foster watched the global map light up as each new EAA came online. Beside her, Kevin Patterson coordinated with technical teams worldwide. "Moscow reports full power," Kevin said. "Berlin and London are ready." Admiral Hayes entered the command center, her face grim. "The Nexari have stopped their test attacks. All ships are pulling back to high orbit. They're getting ready for the real thing," Emma said quietly. The Admiral nodded. "Our last satellites count over 1,000 ships, more than we've ever seen. They'll attack within hours." Above ground, millions of people lined up to volunteer for the EAA pods. They knew the risks. Connecting to the arrays would leave them helpless during the battle. their minds focused only on broadcasting emotions. In New York, a mother kissed her children goodbye before entering an EAA station. In Tokyo, an old man helped his wife into a pod, then took his place beside her. In Cairo, a group of teenagers joined hands before separating to their pods. 700,000 volunteers connected globally, Kevin reported. Still short of what we need. Emma checked the power readings. We need at least another 200,000 to generate a strong enough broadcast. The facility shook. On the main screen, they watched Nexari ships begin to descend through Earth's atmosphere. Their black crystal surfaces seemed to absorb light itself. All stations, prepare for emergency activation, Admiral Hayes ordered. We go with what we have. Wait. Emma grabbed the facility microphone. Her voice would reach every EAA station worldwide. Everyone listening, I know you're scared. The Nexari are stronger than ever. But remember, they've been afraid of us from the start. Not our weapons or technology, but something deeper. They fear our emotions, our connections to each other. She took a deep breath. Think about who you're protecting. Your families, your friends, your homes. Let yourself feel everything. The fear, the love, the hope, the anger. Let it all flow naturally. Together, we're stronger than any crystal ship. As she spoke, more people rushed to volunteer. 1,000 more in Mexico City, 3,000 in Johannesburg, 10,000 in Shanghai. 900,000 connected, Kevin called out. 950, 980. The first Nexari ships entered firing range. Around the world, conventional weapons opened up, trying to buy more time. 1 million volunteers connected, Kevin shouted. All EAA stations report ready. Admiral Hayes raised her hand. On my mark. 3, 2, 1. Duro itice est. 1 million humans focused their emotions at once. They didn't try to feel the same thing. Instead, they let their feelings harmonize naturally. Love, fear, hope, determination, anger, joy, all flowing together like a mighty river. The EAA towers glowed bright enough to be seen through solid rock. Around the world, the emotional broadcast surged upward. At first, nothing seemed to happen. The Nexari ships continued their descent. Then they saw it. Tiny cracks appearing in the black crystal armor. The cracks spread, glowing with white light. It's working. Emma grabbed Kevin's arm. Their new armor is failing. The first Nexari ship shattered completely, raining crystal shards into the ocean. Then another broke apart over Russia. A third exploded above Brazil. But the broadcast was taking its toll. In EAA stations worldwide, volunteers struggled to maintain the emotional output. Some fell unconscious, others cried out in pain. We're losing people, Kevin reported. Neural strain is too high. Emma rushed to the nearest pod section. Hold on, she called to the volunteers. Just a little longer. A teenage girl in one of the pods opened her eyes. My brother, she whispered. He's in the Sydney station. I can feel him. Other volunteers reported the same thing. Somehow, the EAA network wasn't just broadcasting emotions. It was connecting people across the world. Mothers felt their children in distant cities. Friends separated by oceans touched each other's minds. The combined broadcast grew even stronger. More Nexari ships cracked and exploded. Their perfect crystalline formation broke apart as they tried to retreat. But it wasn't over. The largest Nexari ship, their mothership, still hung in orbit, undamaged. Its surface was changing, adapting to resist the emotional broadcast. Maximum power, Admiral Hayes ordered. Everything we have. Emma watched the power readings climb into the red zone. They were losing more volunteers every second to neural strain. The remaining Nexari ships were recovering, their armor beginning to repair itself. They needed something more, something to break the Nexari once and for all. But what could be stronger than 1 million humans broadcasting their emotions? Then Captain Daniel Wright walked into the command center, and Emma had one last, desperate idea. "We need to get inside that mothership," Emma told Captain Daniel Wright. "The EAA broadcast isn't strong enough from Earth. We have to transmit from within their own crystal structure." The massive Nexari mothership loomed above Earth, its surface already healing from the emotional assault. Around it, smaller crystal ships were reforming their battle lines. "The Harbinger is the only ship fast enough to reach it," Daniel said, "but it's a one-way trip." Admiral Hayes looked at her tactical screen. "Our volunteers can't maintain this broadcast much longer. Whatever we do it now." Emma grabbed a portable EAA device she and Kevin had built. "I'm going with you, Captain. The device will need adjustments once we're inside." "No," Kevin stepped forward. "I'll go. You're needed here to coordinate the global network." But Emma shook her head. "I understand the Nexari better than anyone." And she touched the photo of Brian on her desk. "I made a promise." Minutes later, the Harbinger lifted off from its underground hangar. Emma, Daniel, and a small crew raced toward space as the battle raged around them. "All EAA stations," Emma broadcast from the ship. "Focus your emotions on the mothership. Create a path for us." A million minds turned their feelings toward a single point in space. The smaller Nexari ships in their path cracked and moved aside, unable to withstand the concentrated emotional energy. The Harbinger's engines burned at full power. Warning lights flashed as the ship pushed beyond its limits. Through the viewport, Emma watched the mothership grow larger. Its black crystal surface was different from the others, more complex, almost alive. "Impact in 30 seconds," Daniel called out. "Brace for." A crystal beam hit the Harbinger's engines. The ship spun wildly. "We're not going to make it," someone shouted. Daniel grabbed the controls. "Yes, we are." He fired the last emergency thrusters, turning the ship's uncontrolled spin into a deliberate roll. The Harbinger crashed through the mothership's outer layer, crystal shards flying everywhere. Engineering deck breached. Warnings blared. Hull integrity failing. "Move," Daniel ordered. The crew grabbed emergency suits and the EAA device, evacuating the dying ship. They found themselves in a crystal corridor that pulsed with dim light. The mothership's interior was like a giant geometric maze. "This way," Emma pointed. "The energy readings are strongest in that direction. It must be their central chamber." They ran through the crystal tunnels as the ship shuddered around them. The combined emotional broadcast from Earth was affecting the mothership's structure, but not quickly enough. "There," Emma pointed to a massive chamber ahead. Countless crystal formations converged on a central point that glowed with intense light. "The Nexari hive mind," she whispered. "Their shared consciousness." Emma quickly set up the portable EAA. "Captain, get your crew back to the escape pods. This will be intense." Daniel hesitated. "What about you?" She smiled sadly. "Someone has to stay to channel the broadcast." "Then I'm staying too." Before Emma could argue, the chamber walls began to move. Crystal spikes grew toward them, trying to trap or crush the intruders. Emma activated the EAA device. "All stations, full power, channel everything through this point." A million human minds reached out across space. Their emotions, fear, hope, love, anger, joy, determination, all flowed through Emma and Daniel into the heart of the Nexari consciousness. The crystal chamber blazed with light. Emma felt other minds joining the broadcast. Billions of humans who weren't even connected to EAA stations were somehow adding their feelings to the surge. 8 billion humans, all feeling, all connected, all focused on one point in space. The mothership's crystal structure began to sing, a high note that grew in pitch and volume. Cracks of light appeared everywhere. "It's too much," Daniel shouted, holding Emma as the chamber shook. "It's everything we are," she called back. "Everything they feared." The crystal walls shattered. The central light exploded outward. Emma felt the Nexari consciousness touch her mind for a moment, felt its shock at the depth and power of human emotions. Then the mothership broke apart. The remaining Nexari ships went dark, and still, their controlling consciousness gone. Around Earth, people opened their eyes in EAA pods, feeling both exhausted and somehow larger than themselves. Emergency ships rescued Emma and Daniel from the crystal debris. As they descended to Earth, Emma watched the black crystal shards burn up in the atmosphere, falling like stars. What did they feel? Daniel asked quietly. At the end, Emma thought about that brief contact with the Nexari mind. Wonder, she said. They never imagined emotions could be so strong, so complex. They thought feelings made us weak. She looked down at her home planet, where billions of people were celebrating, all still faintly connected by the echo of their shared emotional broadcast. But that's why we won, she finished. Not because our emotions hurt them, but because they unite us, make us stronger, make us human. The sun rose over Earth as the last crystal ships dissolved. Humanity had faced its greatest threat and discovered its greatest strength, not in weapons or technology, but in the very feelings that made them who they were. And somewhere, Emma thought, Brian was smiling.